Hi, welcome back. So we are to discuss the second data set, which comes by default once you install a JAMOVI desktop application. The data set is called the bugs data set. Let me explore about the data before we explore the analysis on it. So we've got number of variables here. The X1 happens to be the gender, X2 is the region, then education. Then you get these four variables. First of all, let's look at the outcome of the gender, they are nominal, region as well, education. And then you get these four variables. What is the idea? That the research wanted to figure out perception of a citizen of those regions. How do they perceive the issue of bugs? The problem of bugs. And in order to capture that, the researcher decided to measure two factors. The first one, the factor of feeling disgust, and the second one being frightened by deciding a low level of feeling disgust and high level of feeling disgust. And same for low level of feeling frightened and high level of feeling frightened. He decided to create those variables, since you get like two possible outcomes of each factor, by saying, for example, low disgust with low frightened, then low disgust with high frightened, then high disgust with low frightened, and then high disgust with high frightened, which are here. So once the design is ready, obviously then you go to the step of collecting number of subjects, the people who participated, N of them sample, and ask gender, region of residence, their education, and then how they evaluate those on a scale from 1 to 10. 1 is the lowest, 10 is the highest. So what we should do next is to suggest number of research questions, what actually I want to do in order to do the right analysis, either uni, bivariate, or multivariate. For example, just like for discussion for now, I can tell you, maybe I'm interested to figure out whether the gender between these two groups, are they different in the way they voted, the level of feeling disgust or frightened, either on high or low. Maybe I want to discuss also in terms of the region, or in terms of their education and the difference. Maybe also I want to figure out how the differentiation between these four variables. Now, since we understood the data set and what it's all about, let's go ahead and import the data set to JAMOVI. I have already imported the data set by opening open, and on data library, we just import the bugs data set. Now, obviously the data set, as we said, if we want to explore the variables, you've got the subject name. This is not so much intuitive important to us, but maybe we want to figure out about the gender. It's a nominal. Then we got the region. We got like a number of regions, and they are nominal. And then we've got the education level, and they are nominal. And then you got these variables. Now, I want to say that it seems like the dataset comes with the default of considering the measure of those variables from 1 to 10 to be continuous. For me, I think it is an ordinal, better than continuous to consider, but I will leave it like so, and I will show you different way of visualizing that. So the first thing we want to do is just to explore some descriptive on the data set. So if I would to take these four variables, look at the maybe missing values if they are there, etc. But you look at their mean. Now the mean here, because it's on a scale from 1 to 10, you would get such a mean. You can expect that, but I would prefer to look at the median in this case to see the median different between them. But let's open statistics and try to see the mood, if you like, to figure out, for example, on low disgust, low frightened, mode of 3, this number occurred quite across number of subjects. It was the most frequent one. Next thing, maybe you want to look at the plot. So on the first variable, the low disgust, low frightened, seems to be, to me, of course, not completely normally distributed. Now, if you look at the second variable, wow, that is obvious that the distribution is completely skewed, where you could see the people towards a higher scoring feeling of low disgust but highly frightened. Also in the feeling of highly disgust but low frightened, it's somehow also skewed to the right hand side. But the last one is quite obvious to see that people highly discussed and highly frightened, it's completely squeezed to right where people really want to get rid of bugs. That's what it seems to be. If you like to look at a distribution by gender, for example, let's just split. Although I can see that the female subject were more than male, but I wouldn't be worried for now too much about that. But if you look at the median difference between the two groups, we're not so much difference beside the last one. Maybe the median was quite a bit different. Still, maybe by pictures that will be quite better to observe that in the first variable, you could see they are just next to each other. They are not much of a difference, and these are overlap box ply. Also in the second variable, the third variable and the fourth variable, seems that the variable measures in terms of the gender, they didn't really have a different differentiation between the measure of mean or even median. Obviously, we can see that. Now, the test will decide whether we're saying it happens this only by chance on the sample, or it's really a reflection of population perspective. If you like, also can you take their education? Does the education shows difference? So we know that we have some level of education, advanced college, high, less, and partial, and some. Once again, I don't see the distribution for the people are quite equal, but still it's fine. Let's check the median. See the people, for example, advanced education seems to feel a bit low discussed and low frightened. But if you look at the four variable here, people who have high education, they were quite highly discussed and highly frightened comparison to other groups. But once again, if I want to look at the graph, the reason if you see it that way, because you could see the number of the people who have advanced education, there were only 2 subjects and 5 in a college, 2 in a partial. So the distribution was not quite a bit normally distributed, the number of cases. In terms of education, might be not so much intuitive. Also, if you like to look by region, could see from Australia we get only 1 subject, from Europe 9, North America was 77 is the dominant number of participants. You could see again, I'm not sure if the visualizing images are quite enough or intuitive to make a conclusion. That's why we need some kind of a test to do that. We could come to the frequency and try to find distribution on the gender, for example. You see the portion here, we get 68% that were female, 31% were male. In terms of the region, you got like from Australia, Europe, you could see the difference here. 83% they were from North America, and the rest just of 15% were distributed across other 4. So that's why this is a quite significant partial P here with a chi-square test. So that was the general idea. Now, what actually we want to do, let's try to ask a very important question, and that is to find whether we have, in terms of low discussed, low frightened, male and female distribution, are they different on the vote of this? But we want to use a test now to confirm our perception on that. Which test is the right one to use? Bring our roadmap and figure out which one is it. Now, first question, the gender, male and female, obviously there are 2, so we are in this region. They are independent. For now, let's say I'm interested to find out about the mean. So in this case, I'm looking at t-test. Now, if I want to go to analysis and try to find the t-test, it's obviously to be independent, not paired. And then what I want to do, I want to bring this variable in terms of low discussed, low high, and in terms of the 2 genders. Final result, it's say the p-value, it is not significant. The 2 groups, male and female, in the way they voted of low discussed, low frightened, are the same. Let's try to bring them all actually together. You could see none of them, they are significant. Maybe the last one, highly discussed, highly frightened, a little bit was above the non-significant. But anyway, still it's obvious that all of them not significant. So if you want to look at the descriptive apply, you could see, for example, here the difference between the mean and the median. The mean, they are overlapped. But if you look at the median, you could see the difference between them is above there in low discussed, low high. Same thing for the second variable, seems quite a bit at the same kind of a median, but the mean is quite a bit different. That none of them is significant in terms of the gender. If you want to take the region, it is wrong. It's not going to happen. And the reason why, now we know the region, we have more than 2 groups. We have like 4 regions, 5 regions. So we are using the wrong test. If we get back to our table, we have here more than 2, and they are independent by nature. I will try to use the mean to see the difference between the groups in terms of the region, and then the median to see the difference of reading. Come back to ANOVA here, and we've got like one-way ANOVA, and we explored this previously. Now, this is not repeated measure because we're trying to figure the difference between groups. So let's take the ANOVA here. So the dependent variable, we could take either one of them. So let's take the highly discussed, highly frightened, and then you take the variable of the region here. What the result shows you, this isn't significant once again, but one important thing we have to do always is to check the assumption of the homogeneity test assumption. If you look here, the result shows you could pass on it because they are not significant. So the assumption of variance between the groups are similar. So this result can be reliable because this is larger than the O over 5. If you try to take another variable, let's take the low discussed, low high. We check in again, we pass, and again we see it isn't different between the 4 different regions, and the assumption is met as well. I try to take the highly discussed, low frightened and try to check. Once again, it is fine, but we were very close to violate the Levine test in terms of highly discussed, low frightened. Although it shows a significant test, you might consider to look at this quite carefully. If you want also, you can of course check the partial theta square, as we said, to see how much the differentiation between this group is accounted by this variable. This is the test that I said that we can use because we got more than 1 groups in here. But I'm interested to use the cross-scale one in terms of the median between them. So what I could do, I will be taking the variables, all of them at once, all right, in terms of the region, because I got like 3 or 4 regions different. The cross-scale test is showing me that none of them shows actually different. Now I'm comparing in terms of the median here. So, and with the effect size, you could see also close to 0. So you could see here when we use the cross-scale as a non-parametric, because we assumed the normality was violated among the last 3 group in particular, the ANOVA, although met the homogeneity test passing as the variance between the groups were equal, but somehow I wouldn't rely really in ANOVA on that. So I would be preferring to use the median, especially the calculation 1 to 10. To me, it's an ordinal rather than a continuous. Also, if you like to take in terms of their education, again, they are not significant. This was the comparison across different independent groups. But how about the subject itself? Like this guy, she was a female from North America. She has advanced education, and she voted for feeling low disgust, low frightened, 10. And then again, she voted 10 and 10. So you could see like something, I don't know, seems to be not completely right. But the third subject here, voting low disgust, low frightened at 5, but highly disgust, highly frightened at 10, and the other 10, 10, that makes much sense to me. So what we want to see, we want to compare the answers across all those subjects at 4. And what is the right test to do that, as we discussed earlier, is to do the repeated measures of ANOVA. So now to do the repeated measures of ANOVA, you have to decide it on the factors. Now, how many factors? And according to the design, we saw that we have 2 factors, right? The disgust and frightened. It was measured in 2 levels of feeling high and low. And to do that, basically, we come to the first factor. Let's call it the level of feeling disgust, for example. And then we know we got low and we got high. And then on the second factor, frightened. And once again, we got low and high. Now, what they expect me now, the repeated measure cells and asking me to fill up the low disgust, low high is here. Low disgust, high frightened, highly disgust, low frightened. Both of them are high. are here. Now, if I use this, you could see in level of disgust, frightened, both of them seems to be within the subject effect to be significant. The guys were voting differently. But the assumption here, it doesn't make sense. If you try to click the homogeneity test, it would be assumed already there because we don't have different groups. We are on one subject, he voted in 4 different variables. So this is something it's not correct even to check out. We could look at the estimated margin of means that by taking the level of disgust as the first term and the frightened as the second term, if you look at low and high in terms of the disgust factor, the difference are quite obvious. Still overlapped a little bit, but quite a bit difference between them is quite obvious in terms of the level of disgust. And this is the estimated marginal means on the table side between with the confidence level of being low. You could see the differentiation between them, and this is where the overlap happens. So the mean of a low, rotated on a low, were 6.51, on a high was 7.25, and level of frightened is quite wider than these. So it turns out that people are frightened more than being disgusted with bugs. Makes sense, actually. That's what the table is showing me, and also the graph. So look at the mean difference with people low frightened is 670, but high frightened was almost 7.60, which is quite obvious in the graphical presentation in here. So that was most of the tests that you might consider to use. You have to be careful about the selection of the test. Depends on the question you are trying to answer and what exactly you want to find out. I give you one more example of the independent sample to see whether the relation between the gender and maybe their education. You might have the ability to do that. I mean, we got the chi-square, you could see is a quite, seems to be not different. It seems to be the same, male and female, their education distributed the same, etc. Yeah, I mean, the test is showing you that. We have the statistical analysis tests are here. The software is doing everything. If you like to plot as well, you might get the bar plot, and you could see they're quite a bit not really different from each other. But the question is, what is the purpose of getting this statistic? What is the purpose of knowing that the two genders in their education, they are not different? Is this the focus of the research? I don't think so. That's an example. No, the focus was to find out the real discussion on those 4 variables, how they've been voted. So I hope this overall second data test, it give you a good idea on the use of the roadmap, the right test to use. Now what we have left to do is the last thing on this book, it is to discuss the lab section 3. And that's in chapter 6. If you have followed the first book, Research from the Start to the End, you will be familiar with the idea that we have accomplished 2 labs in that book, where in the first lab, we brought the problem of the research. Then in the second lab, we prepared all the essential design of the research, everything. We created the instrument, we came up with the idea of collecting the data and everything. And actually we were able even to collect the data. So we have the data set. And now actually in this lab, we assume that the first pillar of data preparation, it is almost done by having a real data set in structured format. I will also be going through the details on that. And now what we expected to start working on is the descriptive model for the first type of analysis, and based on that we create our inferential model and provide by the end of this lab section 3 an answer to the research question at interest. I will see you then.